Yes, we can.
All right, so I'm here today to talk about aircraft certification, which is basically our main field of specialty. And so just talking about a little bit of myself, I'm the co-founder of the Aircraft Certification Channel together with Clarissa, who is here with us today. My background is on civil engineering. Actually, I have never imagined that I would work with aircraft, but here I am with more than 20 years now on the aviation business. And I did a master in energetic planning before starting to work with aviation, and then a postgrad in aeronautic engineering. I worked about 10 years for Embraer with interiors and interior systems in different programs. And after that, I joined Brazilian Civil Aviation Authority, ANAC, and acting as a program certification manager for different OEMs and different programs. I also did a master in aviation safety and aircraft airworthiness in Toulouse, ENAC, and Supaero. It's kind of a joint venture. And during this master, I also had the opportunity to do an internship at Airbus working in their certification office. So it was very nice to see how they worked internally. And right now I'm here in Japan on Mitsubishi Aircraft Corporation, working with a knowledge management and certification training. So this is kind of my background, and now we'll talk about certification. So our agenda today is actually explain a little bit of what's aircraft certification for those of you who are not really familiar with it. And we are going to talk about the types of approval that are involved in the in this environment of the certification. So we'll also talk about the applicable requirements and how the requirements evolve with time, and then we'll open for questions. Okay. So first of all, what's aircraft certification? Because we talk a lot about aircraft certification. So let's take a look at first what certification means. So if you go to the dictionary, certification is like the process of giving official approval to a person, company, or product that has reached a particular standard. So when we're talking about aircraft, it is a product. It's not a person or a company. So it means that a product has reached a particular standard or a minimum required level of safety. And the aircraft certification is ruled on Part 21. So it's EASA Part 21 and FAA Part 21. Which rules the, among other things, the product approvals. And in the Part 21 regarding product approval, we have kind of 5 types of product approval. So the first of them is the type certificate, which means that you're certifying that a product or a type design has reached a minimum standard. And once you kind of receive your type certificate, you become the type certificate holder. To change the type certificate, you need to be the holder. So another type of approval that we have is the supplemental type certificate. And this one can be required for anyone who is not the TC holder. So any third party that wishes to get an approval for another aircraft will require a supplemental type certificate, or what we know by STC. We also have the technical standard orders, which are usually used for complex equipment that are installed in the aircraft that they need themselves to reach a particular level of safety. So they will have a set of standards that they will need to meet before being installed in the aircraft. It doesn't prevent you to have to certify those equipments once you install them in the aircraft, but it's like a pre-qualification that you have for this equipment. And then you work on the integration of these TSO, this equipment, which are already pre-qualified in the aircraft. We also have under Part 21, the parts approval, which are basically used to approve parts for obsolescence reasons. And we also have the repairs when you have a damaged aircraft that you need to repair to recover its original level of safety or airworthiness, okay? So these are the product approvals covered by the Part 21. But the Part 21 is not only that, it's much more than that. But here we're only focusing on the product approval and more specifically on the type certificates. So the aircraft certification process can be like summarized in 5 steps. And the first of them is the application, where an applicant will require a specific type of approval. And once you applied for an approval, you have to determine which are the requirements that are applicable to your design. So that's what we call requirement definition. So once now you have the requirement that you need to show compliance, you will work on the substantiation to show that your design meets the applicable requirements, which we call showing of compliance. Then we have a 4th step, which is what we call finding of compliance. And in this phase, or in this step, the authority and its delegates will work on finding of compliance, on evaluating the documents produced by the TC holder, not yet, but the developer, let's say, the OEM, to verify that really the design complies with the applicable requirements. And finally, when you have all done and all set, you'll get the approval from the authority. Okay, so that's the action of the authority to get the approval, to get you the approval. So I described the aircraft certification process like very summarized, but this is valid for the other type of product approvals as well. But to be able to do that, we need to define the applicable requirements. So that's the question: which are the applicable requirements for my design? And actually, the requirements will evolve with time. So you have to understand like 2 basic principles of the requirements. That first, they will depend on the aircraft category. So, and they will be proportional to the risk that your aircraft represents to the society. So in this picture here, you can see drones, helicopters, eVTOLs, transport category aircraft, general aviation aircraft, Part 29 helicopters, and general aviation helicopters. So it depending on kind of the size of your aircraft and the risk that your aircraft represents to the society, the higher, the heavier the requirement will be, okay? So they are really proportional. And the other thing is that the requirements will improve over time. So the newer the aircraft design is, the heavier the requirement will be, because we have a lot of revisions on the requirements, and many times these revisions will increase the level of safety of the requirement, okay? So in this picture here, I show this graph, which is a graph that I got from Wikipedia. So, but it tells us about aviation safety improvement. So this is a parameterization that they did on, so the scale is fatalities per trillion RPK. So it's fatalities per trillion passenger kilometer revenue. And they started to this graph in 1970 and until 2019, so nowadays. And as you can see, this is like a 5-year moving average. And it doesn't really matter the scale here, but you can really see how the level of safety improved over time, because you got here like 50 years ago with more than 3,000 fatalities per trillion RPK. And now we get like less than 100 fatalities per trillion RPK. So using the same unity, you got from 3,000 to 100 fatalities. So you really can see how the aviation improved, aviation safety improved over time. And I choose to use this image here to represent how the requirements evolve. So we can say that requirements will evolve and will change for 2 different reasons. One of them is industry innovations. So every time that the industry comes up with a new design or with a new feature, with a new thing, characteristic, then we will see the requirement having to evolve to cover things that it was not covered before. So if you think about this bar as representing the level of safety, so the minimum level of safety given by the requirement, every time we have an innovation, we need to kind of extend this bar to the sides to cover something that was not covered before. And another thing that will evolve the requirement are accidents. So every time we have an accident and we have an investigation, we will get important inputs from the investigation, recommendations to improve things. And in this case, we don't want the same accidents to happen again. So we will we will see an increase on the level of safety, getting the bar up. So really rising up the bar to improve the level of safety through the requirements. Okay, so these are basically the 2 mechanisms of requirement evolution. So really, I wanted to say that the aircraft certification itself, it's really essential to the evolution of the aviation safety. And accidents investigation will continuously increase the aviation level of safety. Okay, so basically, this was the message that I wanted to give to you. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with aircraft certification, but I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. So thank you, and that was it.
Thank you,
you.
Rafaela. And I saw one question from student. Just a second. Open chat. Question: how do you measure risk? Question
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, actually the risk, and I think Clarissa will talk about safety and how safety is connected to a perception of the risk. And right now we understand that the current risk in aviation is the risk accepted by society nowadays. So if you go to the ICAO reports, like the International Civil Aviation Organization reports, you're going to see that right now the risk is it's 10 to the -6. So it's one accident in 1 million flight hours. Is that correct? I think so. 1 million. And that's the current level of safety that it is accepted by society, since aviation is still the most reliable and safest transportation means. So I'm not sure if I fulfilled your expectations with my answer, but I think that's the risk today associated with the aviation activities. And actually every requirement, every certification requirement will be connected to this level of safety. So the level of safety is, after all, it's spread through all the certification requirements.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for this answer. So, student, do you have more questions?
Sorry, there is.
I asking from our students. Maybe students have
Okay.
more questions.
Just complementing what Rafaela mentioned, I will talk a little bit more about risk in the safety presentation.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What is the expiration date of the certification?
That's a good one. Yeah, actually, you don't have an expiration date. Once you have the type certificate, you become the type certificate holder. And if you do not change your type design, then your type certificate is valid until the end of your fleet. So whenever, I mean, you need to give support to the aircraft on your fleet if you are a type certificate holder until the end of their operational life. If you change your certificate, then it's something that will build up on your TC. So then you do an amendment to the type certificate, and it's like a pile of modifications that you collect from your original TC, and then you kind of pile up all the modifications that you did on your aircraft. But you don't have an expiration date. What you do have is that the TC is only one point of your, how to say, tricycle, I don't know, because you have 3 pillars to issue an airworthiness certificate. To operate an aircraft, you really need the airworthiness certificate. And to get the airworthiness certificate, you need to show that your aircraft is safe to fly. So you inspected physically your aircraft and it is airworthy. that you have a type certificate, so your design complies with the requirements, and your aircraft was produced in according to the type design. So these are kind of the 3 pillars for issuing the airworthiness certificate. And this one has a validity. So you need to, depending on the category of your aircraft, I think it can be 1 year or 2 years. I think general aviation is 1 year, and in transport category it's 2 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Thanks for the answer.
Maybe I have one question about requirements. So who is main author of this requirement? Who is responsible for creating requirements for aviation, for aircraft?
Okay, that's a good question. Actually, we have, let's say, 2 sources of requirements. So we have ICAO, which is the International Civil Aviation Organization, and every country that is a signatory of the ICAO has to follow their rules that are called SARPs. Once you're a country that follows ICAO, you need to comply with their requirements. The accident investigation is really a good source of a new requirements. So they will make, usually you have some recommendations coming from these investigations, and then the Civil Aviation Authority will have to act to create or to change a requirement, but to include this recommendation into the current requirement. And usually the requirement development is done together with industry. So there is a very known rulemaking process at FAA, but we also have at EASA, which is the ARAC. And so the ARAC will work together, kind of inviting other aviation authorities, inviting organizations that are recognized like RTCA, SAA, Aerokai, and also the industry to discuss what can be done to improve, to address a specific concern and to improve the level of safety. So in the end, it's each civil aviation authority. But we basically have 2 main authorities working on this rulemaking process, which is basically the FAA in the United States and EASA in Europe. And most of the other countries will follow, will be included in the discussions through these rulemaking processes, but they will follow the rules that are coming from these 2 big authorities.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, Rafaela, for a great presentation.
Thank you.